Share screen. All right, so today we're looking at Remix, and let's see. Usually what we do in these meetings is we go over the previous month's coding challenges, and there's usually a easier, medium, and a harder one, and then introduce the next month's one. And that usually takes maybe 20 minutes, and then we go into a topic. But I didn't prepare one for this month, and I don't have one for next month either. And we also didn't meet in November. So we're going to spend the whole time just looking at Remix because it's actually a lot. There's a lot to get into here. I was aware of Remix for a while, but I wasn't really sure what it was for and why it was worth looking into, I suppose. I went to the webpage, the homepage here, and it was just like, there's a lot for me to take in at first. It's got a fancy little webpage. It kind of takes you through different bits and such. Got all these scrolling effects. But I came across this one article by Kent C. Dodds. He's a pretty well-known person in the JavaScript community. Usually he does a lot of things around testing. But I read through this whole thing and didn't really know that the punchline was going to be Remix until I got to like the last paragraph, and he was like, "Hey, and here's Remix, and this is where it lives." So that was kind of cool. I'm just going to run through this little article to give an idea of where Remix kind of fits in. So the first transition for the web was multi-page apps. So basically that's most of the work is done on the server, and you just got the little bit done on the client, right? So this was the days of PHP and all the other sorts of backend frameworks. One second, let me go ahead, Chris here. So as a client, meaning your web browser and your phone, your laptop, your computer, started getting a little bit more powerful, right? There's this idea to let's move some of this logic that was happening on the server over to the client. And I remember my first time going on Facebook and just that realization that I clicked from like one of the pages, like let's say the home page, to like my profile, and that the chat didn't reload, like it stayed there in place while the rest of the page moved. And that realization was like, wait a minute, the page didn't just refresh. How did that happen? And so if you ever seen like that, majority of the websites are built that way now, which is actually that's technically skipping one. He has these acronyms. Single page apps. Single page apps is where we've done most of the work on the client. So in between, he's got this progressively enhanced multi-page apps. So this is where you've added some sprinkles of JavaScript in there to take some of the UI or some of the logic off of the server and onto the client. And so the key technology that made this possible was Ajax, right? To be able to, instead of hitting an endpoint and that endpoint's telling the server to render the new UI, you had some JavaScript that told the server to get some information, and then after that information came back from the server, it maybe rearranged the DOM. It changed how the page looked. Right. So that was the key technology to add on this advanced or progressively enhanced multi-page apps. And then we're kind of in the era right now of, or we have been for the last few years, of single page apps, where we're trying to do as much as we can over on the client, and the server is basically just hosting some APIs, usually just serving up like JSON. It's not even serving HTML anymore. So, well, the first initial load of the page, of course, gives you all the HTML and all the JavaScript you need. But from then on, that page is just talking to an endpoint to get all the data fetching and load all the data that it needs. And so basically, we've kind of come full circle where we realized, okay, yes, clients are getting more powerful, but we're kind of reaching a limit on how powerful they're getting, and not the entire world hasn't quite caught up yet, right? So there's still places that have bad connectivity or lower bandwidth, and if we want our website to be accessible to more people, we kind of have to start rethinking how we build our apps to not make them so heavy. By default, if you make a React app, it is very heavy, right? Much heavier than it would be if you had just written it in the multi-page app. So this next transition that Kent is proposing here, I guess he's calling it progressively enhanced single page apps. So the other one was progressively enhanced multi-page apps, and this one is let's progressively enhance the single page apps. And so let's see if we can get the best of both worlds. Essentially, can we have all these cool UI things where we can only render the bits of the UI that we care about, but also care about performance, right? And care about only giving the clients the minimal amount of code so that they're not waiting for the entire React library and all the JavaScript bundle required. And so, I mean, there's already tricks that we've tried to do that with, right? There's server-side rendering. There's static sites as well. There's code splitting, right? That's instead of sending it all in one big bundle, let's split it up into smaller bundles. So essentially, that's where Remix is coming in, and it's let's see where the paragraph is. It introduces Remix here. Okay. So Remix is a framework with laser focus on web fundamentals and modern user experience. So there are others, Svelte kits, Solid Start for Svelte and Solid respectively. One of them that also caught my eye, I maybe we can look at this another one. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it does, but it's called Astro. And Astro does more or less, I think, this type of architecture, but using whatever framework you want. So you can use Astro with Vue, with React, with Svelte, and it will turn it into more or less this architecture. Remix is not, I don't think Remix is like its own thing. I don't think it's React, or it doesn't use like, it's not like Next.js, which is a wrapper around React. So that's hopefully just a little bit of an idea of where it fits in. And so I figure we'll just kind of start with a quick start. This is my first time going through it as well, so we'll just kind of go through it together. Can you still see my screen if I switch over here? All right, awesome. Sweet. So we're gonna go into here and start following along here. So we've got npx create remix latest template remix run. By default, so they do things in TypeScript. I may or may not follow along with that syntax. So, all right, so it needs to install packages. We'll say yes. I'll make this a little larger too. It's going to ask if we want to do an npm install, and then we're going to do an npm run dev. All right, while that's installing, let's take a look at this first thing here. So we're going to make a new route to render at the post URL. So what we're first going to do is add a link into the index. Okay. Copy that in there. Just picture it. All right, so we're going to stick with JavaScript for now. We'll let it run the npm install. Okay. It's got a few errors here. We'll have to keep. Have any of you actually used Remix yet?
I have not.
Cool. Interesting. It's installing Faker.js, which is famously unmaintained, or rather deleted. See what happens with that. While that's going, let me go back to the homepage here. Let's see if we can get a better example or better description of what Remix is or what it describes itself as. Nested routes, okay. Oh, okay. I kind of skipped over this in this article here, but essentially one of the issues with kind of the switching over to the single page application, right, is that the way in which the server interprets things is different from the way that the web browser does, I suppose. And so, let's see if there's a paragraph in here that explains it. Okay, here we go. In order to do this, PESPAs, TESPAs will say, emulate the browser when they prevent default. So the server code works the same way regardless of whether the browser is making it or JavaScript-based fetch request speed. Okay, so essentially when you've got single page applications, right, you've got the, when I go to a route in the URL bar and I've typed it in, it goes to the server and says, hey, I need the information for this route. And the server has to respond with the HTML needed to render that page. But let's say I'm already on that page and I'm clicking around and I've clicked onto a different URL and it looks like inside of the URL bar, the URL changed, and it did change and it got added to history. But it didn't actually, like the browser didn't actually go to that URL inside of the web page. It told it manually pushed that onto the history stack, and it manually made the API call. So now the server has to respond to that slightly differently. Instead of sending it the entire page to render, it only sends the data that's needed in order to change the bits on the page that are needed. And so what you end up having is that your server has like two types of responses. You have like two APIs you have to build. You have to build the API for servicing that single page application, and then you have to build the API for servicing the web page itself. And so I believe Remix tries to kind of make them look the same, kind of squash it together so that you can't really tell when each one is happening, essentially. Okay, so something failed here. Remix init failed. Let's try rerunning it. Missing script setup. Okay. Let's see what we got here. I was looking at some of the errors when this was happening, and it looked like some of it was related to trying to translate from TypeScript to JavaScript. So I'm going to see if we have any more success with TypeScript here. But looking at like Next.js, for instance, which is a React framework, right? So it does a similar sort of thing, but one of the things that you have to do is there's a difference between server-side stuff and client-side stuff. And they live within the same code base, often right next to each other, or sometimes in the same file even. But you just got to mark something as this code only runs on the server and this code only runs on the client. So all right, let's look at more stuff related to Remix then. Okay, go back to our tutorial here. All right, okay, looks like I had more success with the TypeScript one. So missing script dev. Oh, you know what? I'm not in the right folder. Cool. We are finally up and running. Let's take a look at what we got here. Okay, so this is what we wanted to be looking at. We'll just kind of follow along the tutorial and see what it teaches us as we go. So it said take this thing and put it into our routes index.tsx. Let's kind of take a look at what we've got inside of our route here. So it's got an app folder, Cypress for tests, mocks, it's got Prisma in it. Take a look at some of the dependencies that it has too. It's using Tailwind for styling. Okay, so I was wrong. It is actually similar to Next in that it's a wrapper around React. So it's got React in there, and it's got Prisma for the backend. All right, so take a look at those the routes. It was app routes index.tsx. Okay. So it says to place this link in here somewhere. We'll place it in of the too much. Okay, presumably it rebuilt itself. And the link is where did I put it? I put it in above indie stack. Oh, okay, so it's probably hiding somewhere over here. Oh. Okay, let me move it somewhere else. We're gonna move it down to above this bit right here. There's excellent copied ES there. So let me go back here and grab this again. Okay, there it is. So we put a new link in here to a blog post page, but there is no post page. So now it's going to show us how to actually add that link in there. The Remix Indie Stack has Tailwind support configured. Okay. We're going to make a directory app routes posts, and then we're going to do a post/index.tsx. So routes, we'll do a new folder called posts. And then inside of that, we'll create a file called index.tsx. Okay. So make the post component. We'll do that. Okay, and let's see if we can actually go to the post page now. There it is. Okay, so what's going on here? The routes are using directory-based routing. So this is /posts, which is this folder posts, and it's looking for an index page in there. Loading data. Data loading is built into Remix. If your web dev background is primarily in the last few years, you're probably used to creating two things here: an API route to provide data and a front-end component that consumes it. In Remix, your front-end component is also its own API route and already knows how to talk to itself in the server from the browser. If your background's a bit farther back than that with MVC frameworks like Rails, then you can think of Remix routes as a backend views using React for templating, but then they know how to seamlessly hydrate in the browser to add some flair instead of writing detached jQuery code to dress up the user interaction. So this is the thing that I was explaining where it's kind of like using PHP or Rails to provide templates for your data, your views essentially. But in addition to that, it uses it to rehydrate and provide just the data so that when you re-render the page, it doesn't actually have to actually go and re-render the whole thing, it just updates the bit that's needed. So let's update the code in index.tsx. So this is using Remix run node and use loader data for Remix run /React. We've got a couple posts here, and we're just going to use the loader data and log out the posts for now. So we're not actually displaying them yet. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Refresh that. And let's see if we got our posts. There's our posts right there. Okay. Loaders are the backend API for the component, and it's already wired up for you through use loader data. It's so wild how blurry the line is between the client and server in a Remix route. If you have your server and browser consoles both open, you'll notice that they both logged our post data. See that? Here it is. So they both got the post data. That's because Remix rendered on the server to send a full HTML document like a traditional web framework, but it also hydrated in the client and logged there too. So let's actually display it now. We'll add the link import from here. And we will, where do we put that? Underneath here. Map over it. And now we got our post. So, back to the tutorial here. We got a pretty solid degree of type safety even over a network request because it's all defined in the same file. Unless the network blows up while Remix fetches the data, you've got type safety in this component and its API. So let's do a little refactoring. A solid practice is to create a module that deals with a particular concern. In our case, it's going to be reading and writing posts. Let's set that up now and get a get post export to our module. So we're going to create a server-specific thing in app models. We'll do post.server.ts. Okay. We're going to copy and paste the stuff over here. We're making our get post function async because even though it's not currently doing anything async, it will soon. Okay. Update the post route to use our new post module. So we want to add this bit to our posts. Or remove this bit. Okay. So now this get post is actually going to get it from our post.server file here. So you can create your models to actually get the data from your database and keep them separate from the actual rendering your views, essentially, of your data. Oh, actually, let's actually pull it from a data source then. With the Unistack, we've got an SQLite database already set up and configured for us. Let's update our database schema to handle SQLite. We're using Prisma to interact with the database. So we'll update that schema on Prisma and we'll take care of the rest. Okay. So we're going to go to schema.prisma. And actually, let's make sure I got the right one because it looks like there's a couple of them. There's, okay, that is correct. We're going to create a post. Put it under note. I'll put it at the bottom here. I don't have the syntax highlighting here, but we'll do that. So Prisma is actually, let me find a good description of Prisma because I more or less know what it is, but I can't describe it very well. So it's an ORM for JavaScript, and it allows you to actually kind of go the other way as well. Instead of just you can define your schema in this thing called Prisma.schema, and it'll actually create the scripts and migrations that you need to actually create that in the database, and it does that for you too. So this is actually kind of creating this model, the slug of a string, and it's a primary key of ID. It's got a title that's a string, marked down the string, and create that and update it at date time. So now we're going to do npx prisma db.push or db push. Let's see, I got to do that in a new terminal here. cd disassemble Remix test. Okay. Your database is now in sync with your Prisma schema. And now let's seed our database with a couple of posts. So we'll open up seed TS and we'll add a post bit. So it's right before the console log, so right here. Okay, so property post does not exist on Prisma client. Did I put it in the right place? Prisma note create post. Let's double check this. End of the seed functionality, right? Right about. Okay. Wait, Prisma.post. Cert. All right, this is where we have to kind of get through the TypeScript stuff. Post of posts. Interesting. I think part of the issue here. No, that's not true. It's kind of weird that they're using post in two places, but this post is not the same as that post. So this is saying Prisma client does not have a post property. Let's see if we can go to its type definition. Figure that out here. Okay. Well, oh, interesting. It decided to go away. Let's try seeding it again. Or never did seed it. Let's see. Seed is Prisma DB seed. Cool. Okay. So somehow that just went away. We're going to create a migration file for our schema changes, which will be required if you deploy your application rather than just running in dev mode local. So we don't really need to do this, but we'll do it anyway. We need to reset the SQLite database at file. Do you want to continue? And it says yes or no. And the default is no. Okay, let's say no. I don't think we really need that now, so we'll continue without it. Now we're going to update the model to actually get it from the DB server. So let's see. Post server. Get posts. Okay. We're able to remove the return type. Everything's still fully typed. Okay. The DB server import is importing the file at appdb.server.ts. So let's see what file that is. db.server.ts. Okay. The tilde is a fancy alias to the app directory, so you don't have to worry about relative paths. Okay. The Prisma client has been updated. We will need to restart our servers to stop the dev server and start back on npm run dev. Okay. I'm not sure we actually did that, but we'll do it anyway. So go back to here, stop the server, and start it up again. Okay. With the server up and running again, you should be able to go to posts, and the posts should still be there, but they're not coming from SQLite. Okay. Cool. So this is now coming from our actual database. So let's take a look at dynamic route params now. Let's make a route to actually view the post. We want these URLs to work, my first post and 90s mixtape. So we'll create a dynamic route at routes posts slug.tsx. Okay. There. To tsx. Okay. And then we'll do export default post log, return some posts for now. Okay. So now we should be able to click on any of these posts and it'll just kind of do the sum post for now. But now we actually want it to get the data for that post. So go back to tutorial here, add a loader to access the params. And add the loader here as well. Some post slug in there. Do I have an error? This I do. I don't see it. I think it's just not refreshed. Okay, we're good. Nope, still yelling at something. All right, let's see if the page is yelling at me. Today is not defined. Okay, I did just type something somewhere. Where do I have an error in here? Let's go back to here. What I'll do is just I'll copy and paste the whole thing here. Oh, okay, I saw that. There's a little J that I had at the end of the file there. Okay. The part of the file name attached to the $sign becomes a named key on the params object that comes into your loader. So now let's actually get the post contents from the database by its slug. So let's see what's going on so far right now. Go back to the post here. Okay, so now we got the actual slug of the my first post there. So we'll go 90s mixtape. We got the 90s mixtape coming in right there. Cool. So now let's actually use it to fetch the data for that page. So in our post server to TS, do a get post that gets the find unique for that post specifically. And then we'll use that to get the specific post in our slug one. Where do we put that report here? And loader. Now does JSON of that post. And then we use loader data, type of loader. I think that's what we already have there. Oh, it's saying post. Okay. And then we get post title. Okay, so what are we missing here? Argument of type string undefined is not assignable to type string. Okay. Let's see if it works anyway. It does work anyway. Okay, it's grabbing its title now from the database. Okay, let's see if we can get a little further here. All right, check that out. We're now pulling our post from a data source instead of including it all in the browser as JavaScript. Let's make TypeScript happy with our code. Okay, so that's why TypeScript was not happy. It needed this tiny invariant thing. It needed this invariant bit here. Param slug is required. Okay. Not sure what invariant does. Maybe eventually we'll get a better idea of how TypeScript works and play around with that a little bit more. Okay. So TypeScript is now happy. Okay, here's a quick note on invariant. Because params comes from the URL, we can't be totally sure that param select will be defined. Maybe you can change the name of the file to postd.ts. It's good practice to validate that stuff with invariant, and it makes TypeScript happy too. Okay. So now let's get the markdown parse and render to HTML to the page. There are a lot of markdown parsers. We'll use marked for this tutorial because it's really easy to get working. So inside of the feeder that we created before, apparently this is markdown. So we need to parse it. We'll add npm add marked to our application. And we'll also add the types. Okay, so pull in marked, and then we will grab the HTML that we were on slide. Right. Pull in marked, we'll grab the HTML using that. And we will now grab post and HTML from the loader data. And we'll add a div that renders that HTML. It's using dangerously set inner HTML to do that. All right, let's see how we did. There it is. It's rendering the markdown now. Cool. All right, so maybe let's take a pause and see what's kind of going on here. If we go to this post URL, it is rendering this post page. Open that up again. Not the post server, it is the index.ts in the post route. Okay, so it's rendering this whole thing. It is actually, I will point out that there is this main bit, which means that it's also rendering it within a template. So let's see if we can see what kind of template we've got here. At least I think it is. Styles. Nope. Okay. The reason why I'm okay, here we go. We got a root here. There we are. Okay. So root has this mixed notes. Is that our title? It is our title. Okay. This is our kind of main page template. Let's say, let me just put something in here to test it out. Okay, so now we should see tests on every single page that we go to, essentially, because that template is wrapping everything, essentially. So outlets is presumably where our actual page gets put. So if we were to comment out outlets, my guess is now nothing renders. Okay. The other bits live reload is what's doing the thing that actually reloads our page without us having to go in there and refreshing it. And I'm presuming these bits also provide some other extra functionality.
And since there's only 3 of us, do you mind if I ask questions?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So this default content that's being loaded, but with the main tag.
Yeah, so our main tag in, let's say, index.tsx is being put into here, into this outlet.
Okay. And so is main then like a keyword, like a reserved word?
No, it's actually a HTML tag. it is one of the semantic HTML tags. It's usually.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So it's just because that's whatever's returned goes into the outlet.
Yeah, my guess is I could just replace this with div and it wouldn't matter. Could give that a try. Which page was that on? That was on the post page. Yeah, so it didn't care. We can actually take a look at it. Yeah, so there's our div. It's actually pretty impressive how little is added to the DOM on top of, like if you had React, you have all this extra chunk in there. Actually, we are using React. So let's say I switch this back to article. So now that thing is an article in the DOM right there. So main is just usually the one that you would use for your main content.
And so I was following along mostly. I could watch the video back at half speed probably, and
Oh, sorry.
So how many unique pages, if you can call them that, did you create?
Sure. So what we've got here is an index page. It's our home page. That's the one that it came with here.
Right.
And then we've got inside of this, we've got apparently there's also a notes page already. So let's try going to that notes route. I didn't create that in this tutorial, but it seems to already exist. So we'll go to notes and see what's there. Oh, okay. It's gonna ask us to log in. So apparently there's I think the longer tutorial was the one that went through the whole notes thing, but this is kind of just showing us a simplified version of it. So we added this posts directory, which is kind of like adding that extra slash to the endpoint, right? So slash posts, and it'll look for the index, kind of like your index HTML, to render that page, right? And so way back when we had the original multi-page one, you actually would do a directory and make an index.html or an index.php file, right?
Yeah.
That would use to spit out the HTML. But here it's kind of mimicking that, right? So here it's not really hitting this file, but it makes it look like it's hitting that index one. And so if we are going on that route and providing any other thing, it's assigning that to this $slug. So that's now like anything that we put in there. So let's say we do posts. Oops. Actually, let me just click on one of these. So I could actually put in some ASDF there. All right, and it's now tried to load a page of ASDF, but it couldn't find the data in the database essentially for that. And so that's why.
So the pages that it does find, so my first post, that's not its own file. Is that defined in slugs? Where is my first post defined?
Yeah, that's correct. So that is the slug page. So
okay, so slug catches anything that comes after that directory slash.
Yeah, that's correct. So we'll put slug page here. And so my first post has slug page, as well as this mixtape one has that slug page on it. So any page of that slash. So I actually can't. I don't think you can't have two files in there with a $sign something, right? Because this is already a catch-all. Presumably, I don't know if there's probably some documentation on the route file. Oh, here we go. Route file naming here. Interesting. They're using root TSX. Okay, root is your actual page template. And then you've got routes. Okay, and any JavaScript file in the app routes directory will become routes in your application. File name maps to the route URL path name, except index, which maps to the root path. Interesting. Okay. So you can also just name a file and it would, so they have, for instance, login, join, login, logout notes, which are just files that you can find by, so there's no folder called login here, but there's a file called login under the root directory. So if I had a post here, let's create a new file and call this posts asdf.tsx. And we just put in some interesting.
So is your file structure actually set up? It looks like it's kind of set up the way you would just a plain HTML site with subdirectories and subpages, but it's not loading new pages. It's just grabbing data from them.
Yeah, so it's mimicking as if you are loading that up, and it kind of looks like you're creating a template, right? You're doing your data fetching and you're rendering the stuff. It is also on top of that adding on this root, like it's injecting that into this outlet of the root. But then in addition to that, it's now also, when you're clicking around on the client side, it's not actually re-rendering the entire page every time. If you only had to change a small part of a website, it will only change that one bit. So
it's just re-rendering what's in the outlet piece.
Sometimes not even that. Sometimes even a smaller piece of that, apparently. Let's see if we can find another example of that. So now I've created a posts /ASDF. And okay, so you can, in addition to, whoops, wrong desktop here. Where am I? Okay, in addition to creating a folder, you can actually create a file and make that loaded at that path. So another way I could have done this is create a folder called ASDF, and then inside that folder do index.tsx.
Okay.
They're more or less the same.
So then what is the slug TSX? I was thinking that was what was catching anything inside the posts. Like if you write out your URL,
yeah,
with post / and whatever comes after that.
Yeah, it will catch everything that's not ASDF now, right? So
okay, so slug will catch everything that's not actually its own file.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Let's see if it gets into the bit. Oh, okay. So here we got a bit of nested routing that we're. Let's see. We got progressive enhancement. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll get there. Nested routing. Right now, our blog post comes in the seeding of the database. Our solution, we need a way to create a new blog post in the database. We're going to be using actions for that. Okay, so we're now pulling data from the database. We'll try putting data into the database. We'll create a new admin section of the app. It says link to admin. We don't really need to add that in there. We'll create a admin. Oh, okay. Ironically, we'll just rename this guy to admin, and we'll copy this guy over. Okay. Okay, with that, you should have a decent looking page with a post on the left and a placeholder on the right. Now you click on the admin link, it'll take you to post/admin. Okay. So let's go to admin. So here's our blog admin. No, oh, okay. This is just wrapped. There's not 3 URLs there. It's just this one is long enough that it wrapped around. Okay. So we're gonna, that confused me for a bit. I was like, where did this third one come from? Okay. So now what we're gonna do is index routes. Let's fill in that placeholder with an index route for admin. hang with us, we're introducing nested routes here where your route file nesting becomes UI component nesting. Wow, okay. So we create a folder for admin TSX child routes with an index inside. Okay. So now we've got an actual file called admin, but we're also going to create a folder called admin with an index inside of it. Okay. And inside of that one, we'll paste this in there. Okay. So now, if you refresh, you're not going to see it yet. Every route inside app routes post admin can now render inside of app routes post admin TSX. Interesting. When their URLs matches, you get to control which part of the admin TSX layout the child route to render using another outlet. Okay, interesting. So now we're going to add outlets to our admin TSX file, which is in the posts folder. You hold it here, okay. And what did it tell us to do? Add an outlet. Oh, here it is. It highlighted the wrong line there. So we're going to add it to here. Okay. All right. Okay, that's really cool. So let's go through what just happened there. Inside of this page here, this is the admin page, which loops through our posts and displays them on the left side right here. And then has another main section that has an outlet. That outlet pulls content from the matching admin index.tsx. So it looks for a folder called admin and then looks for the index.tsx, and it pulls this thing, which is create a new post, and puts that inside of there. So now we've got kind of like a nesting, like similar to what routes did here, or roots did, sorry. Root pulled in our index that was located in our routes directory. So it looked inside routes and looked for index, and then pulled it in and put it in the outlet. Or actually, technically, it looked anything that matched that URL went into the outlet. Anything that matched that slash URL, essentially, right? So now, go ahead.
So one more question: the routes directory, is that we're not indicating that in our path, are we? Is that just a default place that the root looks?
Yeah.
The root TSX looks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. That's just kind of like the boilerplate structure that's required for this to work.
Okay, so got it.
Yep. And so now that we're in the admin, actually, sorry, we're now in the, let me double check. Yes. So now we're in the posts/admin route. And when we use outlet here, it looks for anything that's in that admin directory. So it looks in the admin directory and looks for index.tsx. So for instance, let's say I were to create another file here, and we'll do ASDF again, why not? And we'll grab our, because I don't quite remember how to, we'll just create something simple in here that just says ASDF again. Okay. So now what we've got here is, okay, we've got an admin folder that has ASDF inside of it. And what that's going to do is anytime that I see admin/ASDF, it's going to render it inside of this outlet instead of that bigger outlet, which was the whole page.
Okay, so it's using the admin file and then going into the admin directory, but it's instead of grabbing index, it's grabbing the root you specified.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, let's kind of copy over the slug guy here, and we can do the same sort of thing where we're just going to do
and where in slug does it indicate what paths it will intercept or resolve?
It will try and do any of them, right? So let's see. Let's say let me delete this file again. Go back to where we were. So let's go to this slug guy and do a console.log of just a slug page. So if I am at post and I type in some random thing there, it let's see. I thought it would. Let's check to see on the server side if it's doing it or not. Nope. Okay. Oh, there it is. No, post not found. Okay. So you can see that it's trying to. This guy is trying to handle that, but when it went to the loader to look up the data, it didn't find any data there. So this invariant over here failed. Actually, let's see if we can. I don't know, data. I'm wondering if I put the console log up here for the log this time.
So where though do you define? So if you did want the post slug to resolve that ASDF core path, where in the slug, or where would you define what's at that path?
If we wanted it to, if I wanted ASDF to actually be handled, I could create a, well, I did actually create, no, I guess not. I could create a file to handle ASDF specifically.
Okay,
If
so
okay.
So maybe I'm not clear on what, so it does slug just catch anything that's not
Yeah.
defined, that doesn't exist?
Correct. Yeah.
And what is a successful interception by slug look like as opposed to an error?
That's a good question. So if I go back all the way to our post, my first post page, right? So let's say I actually created a file in posts called my first post. TSX. Okay. And then I just put in some simple output. We'll call this my first post, and we'll just return first. Now that we've done that, I presume this file takes priority over the slug, right? So now I'm seeing my first post as that thing that I just created, instead of actually the slug capturing it and rendering the data that we have in the database.
So when you don't have your own file, can you walk me through what is the slug doing with that path when my first post doesn't exist as a file?
Sure. So now we've gotten rid of my first post, and we click on it, and what it's doing is it's going to slug.
Yeah.
And it's using this use loader data type of loader. Let's see. Where does this loader thing get called? Does it get called? Type of loader. Yeah, okay. So this thing is
defined above.
Yep. I was just making sure that this loader really is the same as that loader, because technically this is like the type. Okay, so
Okay.
it's then doing a wait get post. Get post is from our models. So it's getting the posts for that slug. So actually, maybe what we do first is let's console log params. Params.slug is the bit after the slash, essentially. So whatever is after this is our slug, and it gets stored in our params object. So we're passing that to get post and says, please find me the post called my first post. And if you couldn't find it, it's, this bit doesn't seem to be working very well. It's supposed to say post not found.
And where it's looking for it in the database?
Yep.
Where, okay.
Yep.
And
So it's looking
so
up in the database.
the get post command, the get post call, that's what's looking in the database.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And
Thank
then
you. I didn't mean to derail it. I was just
oh yeah, no worries.
yeah, it's a lot clearer now. Thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah, presumably if they have other things like error boundaries and loading states. So let's say this get posting took a long time. Well, what happened is, right, like is this bit over here can't render until that bit's done. So Remix does have stuff to render something else instead while that's waiting. I'm not sure if we'll get to that in the tutorial or not. But so yeah,
Is it a temporary placeholder that then gets overwritten when it does finally load, or is it just if it's taking too long, load this instead and move on?
Temporary, something temporary.
Okay.
Right. I guess you could have like a timeout as well, right? So it's like, okay, it took way too long, and now I'm going to render something entirely different. But yeah, but generally, like this is just if this did take a long time, what do we say in the meantime? What do we show in the meantime? All right. So okay, so I'm glad we got to this nested routes thing. This now goes to this admin section. Admin. Whoops, that's not right. Was it post/admin? Okay. And so this create new post thing is not working yet. So presumably that's the bit that we're working on now. So actions, add a form to the new route, new.tsx. Do we have a new.tsx yet? No, we don't. Okay, so let's create that. Oops, sorry. Did I move file? Hope not. I tried to drag the Zoom window, and I don't know if I dragged a file instead. Okay, so we've got a new now. Okay, if you love HTML like us, you should be getting pretty excited. If you've been doing a lot of form on submit and button on click, you're about to have your mind blown by HTML. All you really need for a feature like this is a form to get data from the user and a backend action to handle it. In a Remix, that's all you have to do too. So in the days of early web, you actually had a form that the action of that form, you had a method and then in your action, the action told it to go to this URL, and that's the URL that would receive your data. And then that thing would probably do something with your data and then spit back the new HTML to display. It's more or less copying that idea of doing it. There's no action needed because the action is more or less itself. So I think that's actually the way forms work as well. If you don't provide an action, it uses its own URL, something like that, in PHP.
Meaning uses the URL that the form is already in?
Yeah, the URL that you're already on. I think that's how it works. It's been a while since I did PHP. So. All right, so let's see. Let's create an essential code that knows how to save a post first in our post.ts module. Add create post anywhere inside of post server. Okay, so we'll create a post in post server. This was our model, which interacts with the database for us. Didn't like that there's no type here. Post implicitly has an any type. Are we fixing that anywhere? I don't know. Okay. Oh, actually, we are over here. Okay. We'll fix that later. Call create post from the new post routes action. So in the action for new TSX, do we have an action yet? No, we don't. import. So basically replace the top part of the file with this. Action marks. I believe that's what we needed to do. Okay. So this thing, in addition to its rendering the form, is also the thing that handles its own action. So that's why
Okay.
we didn't specify an action there. I don't know if we can actually specify an action. Like if we wanted it to be handled by a different file, could we put an action in there? I'm not sure. It looks like the TypeScript kind of helped us out there and says there's an optional action. So it seems like that might be the case. You may actually be able to put a different action in there, but we'll follow along with this for now. Okay, so this is saying now, okay, that's it. Remix in the browser will take care of the rest. Let's fix the TypeScript stuff real quick before we take a look at what's going on. So this thing needed to get the post from the client and essentially just say this post is the type of slug title or markdown. Oops, is that right? Post, yeah. Okay. Now TypeScript is happy and not happy in here though. Create post title slug markdown. Create post JSON redirect errors. Okay, so it's got some validation. Let's see if it works for now. Go back to here and create a new post. There's our form. Cool.
Mhm.
So that is this form right here. That is at post admin new. Let's go back to where that is. We're in post admin new.
Okay.
That's rendering inside of the outlet of this admin page. So that's what's going on there.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So let's create a new post title. We'll actually call this one ASDF now. Actually, its slug will be ASDF, so that'll now capture. Actually, let me make sure I'm not shooting myself in the foot here. I don't have a post ASDF. I have an admin ASDF. Okay. So now we'll have a post ASDF, and we'll say ASDF. There we go. And we'll save that. Oops, not save that. Create post. There we go. And there's a post ASDF. Look at that.
Wow.
So what happened there is we pressed submit. It went over to this action guy. This action guy got the form data, the title, the slug, and the markdown, which is the simple as saying name title, literally just putting your names on your form inputs. And it gets it out of the form data for you, and then creates a post using it, and then redirects you to the admin page. And then after you got redirected to the admin page, just click on this ASDF and it's showing your ASDF. So, oh, okay, interesting. I got confused because this ASDF that we're seeing right here is not this ASDF. We have to actually go to posts ASDF to see our post one. And there's our post one.
And where is the create post function defined?
Create post is in post server, which is basically just calling Prisma did all the heavy lifting for us. It created a create for us. When we did the Prisma schema thing, we created this post here. It creates the create function for you. This Prisma post create that got created for us. So it's really Prisma is really cool because you literally just like
so you define the models here.
Mhm.
Those seed the database, like they create the tables.
Yeah. Yeah, so it will, when we ran the command at one point, we ran a command to do npx Prisma migrate or something like that. And it did the migrations for us. In addition to that, like you can have relations and all that. You can have one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many relations and all that. And it will generate all of your queries that you need to create, to update, to delete, to list, and to get specific ones. I'll do that all for you.
Okay. Wow.
So that was really cool. I think what I really loved about that, like, I tinkered with web development when I was pretty young, or I guess a long time ago. 2008, 2009 is probably when I started doing web development, and I was pretty late to the game. Like at that point, we were probably already in the Ajax era, but I wasn't really aware of it, and so I was just kind of sticking with the PHP and HTML stuff,
Hmm.
using form data and such. So this really feels like that era, right? Like we just had this form with the name of the stuff, and then you had your form handler, which just got it right there and did something with it. That was really neat. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can go a little further here. This is now a little bit of validation of that form data that we're adding here. Let me replace this line with it. And we're going to wrap we're going to do this in between here. Okay. That didn't really take away the TypeScript errors, but at least we have some error validation stuff now. So let's see what happens if we go back to our admin and create a new post and don't provide it a title. Create post. Okay. It didn't do anything, but it also didn't give us any errors or any UI to indicate that. So
Is that warning unrelated to the post not being filled out?
let's see.
The
That
title
warning is prop class name didn't match. Client H full.
the little yellow ones popped up after.
Yeah, I think that's like a.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
This
yeah,
yellow
I couldn't read it at first.
Okay, this yellow one is just some issues with how Tailwind is being loaded, I suppose. I'm guessing we just don't have the. Okay, here we are. The bits that actually shows the errors in the UI. Excuse me. So we'll update this to do form and use action data. So previously we were using in Slug use loader data, which loaded data. Now we're using use action data because we're using a form action.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to wrap the error title or the title in this error handler. So where we're showing this post title. Okay, right underneath it, we'll show an error if the title isn't there. And then same thing if the slug isn't there. And same thing if we don't have any markdown. So stick that in. Where did they stick that? Inside the label.
It's interesting. This goes in the form rather than in the handler. The validation.
The validation logic is happening in the handler.
Okay.
And then what we're doing is actually, it looks like I'm missing the bit where I pulled, I'm using that action data to, okay, so what's going on here is I'm checking if I'm seeing this has errors, I'm actually returning JSON, which means that this bit underneath here doesn't get executed, right? So I'm not creating a post anymore, and I'm not redirecting anymore. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm returning JSON, and it's going to re-render this page, and I'm going to put re-render in quotes because it may not need to actually do a full re-render, right? It's taking this bit, this form bit, and then updating the bits that need to be rendered. So now it's going over to this use action data and seeing if there's errors, and then it's saying if I have any errors on the title, then I'm going to give it display this text underneath the post title with that error title, which is over here. Title is required, right? So let's now go back over here, and whoa, okay. Errors is not defined. I thought we had fixed that. Okay, let me see that again. Okay. So if I don't provide a title, for instance, or if I don't provide anything, here we go. Title is required, slug is required, markdown is required. So essentially what happened there is when it submitted the form, it hit this action bit and it said, hey, we're missing title, slug, and markdown. And it's actually, it was really cool is it's doing all the errors, right? It's not checking one at a time, it's checking all of them and then giving you back all the errors at the same time too. And then it's doing this has errors, meaning some, if we have any errors, then return the JSON of those errors. Then this guy is re-rendering that page with now, because I have errors, with those error messages inside of there.
Is I recognize the ternary operator in the handler, but
Yep.
in the form, is that standard JavaScript, or is the way the errors question mark dot title question mark?
There's two things going on here. Question dot is what's called I forgot the name of it. It's if errors is undefined, then it will short circuit and just stop. It won't continue. Right. So then now we're then using a bit of a shortcut, and JavaScript has like falsy values, right? Undefined is falsy. So if it's falsy, it's just going to return null. Right. If it's truthy, if errors is defined, it then looks for title. And if that returns truthy, then we actually display errors.title in there. So this is the ternary operator here, this question in the colon, but this bit right here is checking to see if this thing is undefined. If that's what it's called. It's called optional chaining.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe it's an ES6 feature.
I have not seen that before. That's cool.
It's actually really neat. It takes away a whole class of bugs that you might have. That one, I mean, one of the most famous bugs you'll have is like cannot find property something on undefined, right?
Yes. Yep.
And this basically,
I'm very familiar with that.
this basically eliminates that bug, right? Because essentially you're finding like, is there title on undefined? And this is saying, well, if this is undefined, I'm not even going to bother looking for title. I'm just going to return undefined. And so, I mean, eventually you have to actually handle it, but you can kind of delay the error handling. You don't have to say if errors is undefined, then if title is undefined, then right. You don't have to do all this nested checks to see if something is undefined. This is doing your nested checks for you.
Cool. And right there on line 39, where is the value of title coming from? Is it from name equals title?
Where is this title coming from?
Yeah.
Title is a property of this object on errors.
Oh, so errors dot title. Got it.
Yep. Cool. Let me just run through and see what else we got here. So we got all the way to actions and then progressive enhancement. So let me just jump over to progressive enhancement, because this is kind of the killer feature here now. In real fun, disable JavaScript in your DevTools and try it out. Because Remix is built on the fundamentals of HTTP and HTML, the whole thing works without JavaScript in the browser. So we can now go in here and actually, I don't even know how to disable JavaScript. Let's see if I can figure it out. Go into our settings and we'll see JavaScript. JavaScript allowed. Is that
Is that a
Okay.
toggle? Is that a blue thing, a toggle?
It is. Let's see if we can. Okay. Let's go back to our home page, I suppose. Okay, blog posts. I'm not convinced the JavaScript is disabled though. I'm not entirely sure how to. Well, I guess
We're not seeing
guess
any.
we can put some console logs in there and they wouldn't get logged, right? So our slug page had a console log of params.slug, which isn't getting logged anymore. Let's go back to our post/admin. Okay, so there's no console logs. Literally, there's no console logs. Like we're not even getting our errors anymore because there's no JavaScript running. Okay, we can create a new post. We can do that. Validation is needed there. So there is a bit of functionality kind of missing, right? If you notice there, it did do a full page refresh and it didn't save my post data, right? Actually,
Oh, yeah.
theoretically, you could still have it save your post data if we went into here and said, okay, even if I do have errors, let me also return. I don't know. We could also return the post data that we received and then put it in the template. So that's not something that's too big of a deal, I suppose. But now everything is working with no JavaScript, and you're losing something, right? We are re-rendering the entire page now, but
So what is doing it? Because everything, there's JavaScript in every single file. If that's not running, what is it running? Like what is it?
so we can actually create a post, and we can still go to that. Still go to our post. So everything's working. So it's running JavaScript on the server, right? So it's kind of operating like PHP or Rails, right? It's receiving your form actions and it's acting on it, and then it's returning back the entire HTML needed to render that page. But if you did have JavaScript, it would only re-render the bits of the page that were needed. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, where if you want only a small part of your page to re-render, it will do that if JavaScript's enabled. But if you don't have JavaScript, it will re-render the whole page. And it's not. I've heard a lot of arguments about like, well, nobody actually disables JavaScript, right? And that's not really a thing we have to worry about anymore. But it's not so much about that. It's more about like even if you do have JavaScript, some of these pages are now so heavy that they take so long time to load. So this doesn't do that anymore. And it's also about like low bandwidth too, right? If you had a poor connection, if you have like a 3G connection, something like that, and it can't render the whole page. I don't really know how to do this, but sometimes people do this thing where they throttle they do a slow 3G as well or something like that. Let's see if that works. So, all right, we did this as a slow 3G and it couldn't even tell that was slow. Okay. Create a new post. Okay, so we see it's being a little slower now. Let's do worked and create a post. Okay, so that's no JavaScript and on a slow connection, and it's still working perfectly fine. But you didn't really have to do anything to, like, the way in which you would do this for someone with a good connection and JavaScript is the exact same as how you would build it for someone who didn't have it.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing. Could you do it again with the slow 3G, but with JavaScript enabled, just so I can see a comparison?
Let's give that a try. Create a new post here. actually, let me refresh this page. Okay, so JavaScript is now enabled. We'll do. So I'm going to do this without Markdown to see if it gives me the error. Okay, so this one, if you noticed, it didn't. This one actually used JavaScript to only update that bit that was needed. We could
Right.
tell because it didn't overwrite our bits inside of there. Right. So actually, to be even, I'm curious if I do this. Let me inspect this element here and make a DOM change manually in here.
Hmm.
So I'm going to manually put in inside of
Class or something.
that,
I was just going to suggest adding a class to.
adding a class. Oh yeah, sure, we could do that. We could just say test class. There we go. Okay, so we've added a class to this guy, and we're going to hit create post. Actually, you know what? I'm going to also get rid of that so that we can see something change. Okay, title is required, and it still has test class on it. So it didn't re-render this thing at all.
Yeah.
It just re-rendered the bits that were required. So JavaScript is still at play to make that happen. We saw it took a little while because we're on slow 3G. Now we're going to actually let it go all the way through. All right, so that worked. So I think that's really the killer feature here is that it makes it feel like you're editing in the old days of the web, right? You've got your templates that you're using to render the HTML, but then it also only updates the things that it needs to, and it all works without JavaScript if it has to.
That's neat.
I think it's really cool. So you can still use like let's actually add this pending UI with use transition right here. Slow down reaction with a fake delay. Okay, so we're gonna slow down our action on the add menu. To do remove me. Await new promise, set timeout res. Where am I putting this? This is in here somewhere, but where? Anywhere? Add some pending UI with use transition to the page, use transition and const use transitioning boolean transition, let's submit. Okay. So we put that in here. And we'll say use transition up at the top here. Use transition. Disabled is creating. Oh, okay, interesting. So what we're doing here is we are, while the post is being created, we're disabling the create button. And we're going to actually change the title of the button from create post to creating. Okay. Let's see how that worked. Create new post. Okay. I'm still on the slow 3G too. So.
All right.
Okay. Create post here. That switched to creating. And then when it's done, it took us back there. Okay, so we can still do transitions and all that. You can still do in between page animations if you wanted, right? So you still have all the abilities that you have with single page applications where you could seamlessly transition between pages and things like that. But it elegantly falls back in case things are slow, and it optimally renders pages for you essentially. So Yeah, I think it's really cool. I was wrong.
That's very cool.
I thought that it was framework agnostic. It's not. It heavily relies on React, so you need to use all your React knowledge still. But yeah, I think it's really neat.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you for going over that, going through that for us.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Really appreciate all of you coming this past year. It's been 1 year now that I've been doing JavaScript. Started January this year, so
Really?
grateful for all of you guys who came out. I came across this blog post a couple days ago also about let me see if I can find it on my phone real quick. It oh yeah, it was like why I'm optimistic about JavaScript or something. Because I mean JavaScript gets a lot of negative press sometimes.
Yes.
And not there's probably some good reasons, but there is something to be said. You know, Java had this promise at one point that it could be, you know, learn once, code anywhere. By learning Java, you could run Java applets all over the place, right? And actually, didn't you do Java game development at one point?
I did Flash game development.
Okay, similar sort of concept, right? Like people had Flash in our websites, and we had Java applets in our websites before, and it didn't really pan out. But JavaScript really is the promise that if you know how to write something in JavaScript, you can write something that anyone has access to because everyone has a web browser.
Right.
And
And
so,
all the web browsers run JavaScript.
yeah, exactly. And so maybe they're right. People are right in that we maybe shouldn't use it everywhere. Obviously, you probably shouldn't use it to write embedded programming or something like that, microcontrollers or something. But the fact that we can use the same language now on the back ends, right? Like this Remix thing to very the blend between what is front end and back end is just like so blurry now. You're just writing it in JavaScript, and yeah, I think it's cool. And JavaScript is getting neat new features all the time too. So looking forward to next year and what new JavaScript things we can talk about too.
Yeah, I'm excited. I learned that new one tonight. What do you call the question mark dot question mark?
Optional chaining.
Optional chaining.
I believe that's right. Let me double check. That's right. Optional chaining. Yeah, that's right. The reason the other one that I get confused with is knowledge coalescing. Knowledge coalescing is the double equals or double question mark. Sorry. So by doing double question mark, if this thing is null-ish, then it uses your other thing instead.
Oh, okay. If whatever comes first is not, so it's this or that. If the first thing is nullish, is null. What's nullish compare versus falsy?
It looks like nullish really just is null. So it's not even actually no, never mind. Undefined also is nothing. Undefined. Nullish. Let's see. Is an empty array nullish? It is not. Okay. So null and undefined perhaps are the only things. 0 is not, but 0 is falsy, I believe. So unfortunately, they're not exactly the same. I believe it's just null and undefined.
Which is why they have two different names.
Yes. Right.
Cool.
There we go.
I actually got to get ready for I have an 8:30 meeting I got to get to.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks again for coming. Appreciate it.
And thank you for doing this.
Yep. All right. Have a good one.
Have a good night, Caleb.
Thanks, Hazel.